I joined the campaign in August of 2023, just left now within the past couple weeks, so was there for about 8 or 9 months. And it was a challenging experience. I don't think that I'm the first person to speak out about that publicly. There are other articles that are around right now, sort of talking about what the experience internally has been for staff in terms of being high staff turnover, in terms of there being sort of strange policies and strange sort of threads amongst the company culture. Um, I don't really want to go into the details of what those are specifically, other than things that I've already talked about publicly. But you can look them up, and they're all true. I mean, from my personal experience, everything that's written in the media is true, and I think that it's really a shame that more hasn't been talked about publicly. And I know why that is. It's because everyone's afraid to talk about what's going on in that campaign and how strange and odd it truly is. When you leave an organization like that, and we've had, again, extremely high staff turnover, I think at this point, and this is not an official number, this is my perspective and something, a guesstimate that I would put out there. I've probably seen in my time there 40 or 50 people resign. And every person who resigns has the same sort of sentiment in their resignation letter. And there is feedback coming from staff to the campaign about things that need to change, things that aren't working, things that they're hearing from the public, systems and internal processes that are broken, abuses that are happening, financial, mismanagement and poor stewardship of resources. I mean, it's not these one-off complaints from a disgruntled employee. It's patterns of very smart, accomplished, respectful, professional people saying the same things over and over and over again. And there is just no feedback loop. It's a one-directional feedback loop, right? You have tens of people saying the same thing about what needs to change, and there's never any change. And so there's a lot to my story and what I experienced personally and what I witnessed personally. I will say that at the time that I left the campaign, there wasn't a big event or sort of abuse or injustice or altercation or conflict that happened that caused me to leave the campaign. It was a buildup and a pattern of things that I couldn't stand behind. And this process that I was going through internally of weighing how much good does it take to outweigh the bad, right? And at what point do the scales balance out? I mean, there's so much good in that campaign. There are so many people that I just adore, and I wish
They're there for the right
America
reasons.
could. I'm sorry?
They're there for the right reasons.
Yeah, and people that I wish that America could meet, because they would just fall in love with some of these people. And some of these people have taught me things, and they have supported me, and they have inspired me, and they have encouraged me. And it was grief. I mean, leaving was grief, because I knew that most likely I'd be severing relationships with a lot of great people by not being a part of it and by speaking publicly. And so it's sad. I miss those folks, but again, there's only so much that I think the virtuous side can compensate for when there is that mismanagement and there is that darkness and there is that shadow.
I think that's an excellent point. The whole experience of being in Philadelphia that day and, being in the press corps and meeting all different types of amazing people. And they were there. There's no question about it. It was about 4,000 people, give or take. But it was very unique seeing the whole political spectrum in many ways, all in one place. I ran into a gentleman that I knew from New Jersey that was there. And obviously we met. I do think that there are little things that, one can point to as to where the campaign really went in the wrong direction without you even needing to comment. I do believe the switch at the top with Kucinich and Fox probably had a lot to do with it. And obviously there's a lot of other things that come along the way to consider. why this campaign, which did have a lot of promise, I did think that he could be a threat, and he probably still could be, just because how many people are just tired of the current, two-party duopoly and want to move on to something else. The things that he talked about that I personally agreed with was what he addressed regarding the issue of the corporate capture within private equity, particularly BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and how they are basically going to own 60% of the single-family homes in this country by the end of this decade, which is, if that doesn't scare people, especially in our respective generation and the one below us, I don't know what does, because building generational wealth is something that is going to be very, very difficult to do for a lot of people going forward. As far as the issues pertaining to where he stood on vaccines, some of it was understandable, other parts of it were not. But for me, the big dividing issue for him, and what I actually think could have made the difference in his campaign in a substantial way, was where he stood on Israel, and the fact that he had somebody like Rabbi Shmuley basically as one of his right-hand people, really says a lot to me about his misguided viewpoint as far as how he wanted to go about running this campaign. And especially with everything that's going on now in Gaza, and the fact that neither of the two major candidates are saying what needs to be said, in terms of how you deal with this situation that's going on over there, which is a genocide. And so the fact that he had this opening to do something and he didn't take it, or for whatever reason he hasn't, to me says a lot about these missed opportunities that we have. I mean, I want to believe that we're going to head in the direction of generational change, no pun intended being the official name of the channel. But I do feel like this isn't one of those like missed opportunities where, okay, well, we're done now. No, I do think that a lot more people are starting to come together along the grounds of the core issues that really do drive us as a collective, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the environment, especially the water and the air, when it comes to endless war, when it comes to the current economic situation pertaining to a living wage with our jobs, the ability to get an education, specifically being able to learn a trade, things of that nature. Those things are substantially important. And anyone within the political arena who isn't too far gone, I do think that these types of conversations are essential, because that is the only way we're ever going to get to that positive future that you and I think, and most people in the chat and everyone that's here would agree on, is that the corporate capture of our government is the singular issue that is basically destroying our country from within. And how we're able to overcome that obstacle is going to be very, very difficult. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen, because I do think as every day goes forward, a lot more people are waking up to the reality of where our political system stands today. And I would imagine more than anything else, you made some really solid friendships and relationships over the course of this campaign. And I have no doubt that you're going to take that experience and it's going to make you an even more effective, active political aficionado in whatever capacity you're going to, be involved in going forward. I have no doubt that while it has ended, and obviously has ended in a way that I'm sure you didn't want it to, having that experience is something that I think will pay dividends in the future. Your final thoughts on that as we wrap up?
Yeah, so I've been working in politics for a long time, and I don't know what my future holds. I think looking at RFK and the independent movement, I had so much hope there. And my hope tank is depleted right now. I don't know what it will take to replenish it, or if I'm being pulled somewhere else in my life. I'm not working in politics right now. Granted, I just left the campaign 2 weeks ago, so I
Breathe.
feel like I feel like I need to do justice to myself and to the campaign and to my future potential clients, and have a really good cooling off self-care period, because it was a lot. I mean, working there was hard. It was hard on me spiritually and mentally, and hard on my body. And that's saying a lot, because I've been on a lot of campaigns and I've been in a lot of toxic campaigns. This one was special. And sort of
Well,
closing thoughts.
you've already got the lingo down flat. So kudos to you. They can never
Well,
accuse you of saying something bad, even if you are.
Well, and in closing thoughts, for America about Kennedy, because I do feel like I have a privileged position as being an informed person, not just about the campaign, but an informed person about politics and how the system works in general. Plus, I have this experience working on the campaign. Plus, I have this experience now of going from being someone who thought I could never be indoctrinated and thought I was such this free thinker, individualistic person. And here I go and sort of join this what I consider to be a kind of extremist movement, pretty much overnight, and really get sucked in a way that was profound. And I think what was really scary about my experience with that movement is that, again, it pretty much happened overnight. And I had so many people reaching out to me saying, hey, I want to talk to you about this. I don't think that this is the best thing for you, or I want to share stories of what I know about that movement with you. And the more criticism I would hear about Kennedy or about the campaign, the farther in it would drive me. I used that as proof of what we were doing was right. And so, it's been a good experiential learning opportunity because I've learned a lot about what it's like to be on the inside of one of these movements. And it's helped me think about how I don't think that anybody who's inside of it right now, I don't think that there's anything that I can do or say to make them question what they're doing, or if what they're doing is worth it or virtuous or in support of the ultimate common good. But I do think that potentially my story and talking about it and talking to people who have friends and family who might get sucked into the stuff, I do think that sharing my story could potentially prevent future instances of people going through what I did. And so I do feel like I want to use my voice and my story in a way that's respectful, legal, right? I signed an NDA. The Kennedy campaign infamously has one of the most ironclad vetting and NDA processes in the industry. That's also been
Sure.
widely reported on, which is a little bit ironic for a campaign that's such in favor of whistleblowing and free speech, right? And so and I will say that for a campaign that's about healing the divide, right? I encountered a lot of these types of contradictions, right? We're about free speech, but not when it comes to this campaign, right? We're about healing the divide and bringing people together. But if you're not a free thinker, if you're not an anti-vaxxer, you're stupid, right? It's these, I encountered these contradictions daily, and it really, I mean, honestly, every other day I felt like I was questioning my reality and questioning what I believed in, what was right, what was wrong, what was up, what was down, especially with so many diverse opinions within the movement. It's a lot to take in at any given moment. And I, again, just want to caution people out there that see Kennedy or see anyone as part of this movement. Just because someone's good at pointing out problems and pointing out potential links between these hardships and very real instances of corruption that are taking place every day in our society. I'm not denying that those aren't happening, but that's a different thing than someone being able to come in and create and enact solutions to those problems. And what I learned on this campaign is that candidates, as part of this movement, and again, I'm not naming a specific candidate, can be really, really good at talking and really, really good at talking in a way that makes people go, yeah, I've always thought that. And you just put that into words, or I'm glad someone else gets it, right? They get me, they get it. They can get it all day, but that does not translate into being able to fix it. And if your organization of 100 people is failing because of lack of internal policies that work, lack of policies for getting rid of people who are just toxic and abusive and taking advantage of resources. If you can't manage 100 people, the idea of managing an administration where your internal office staff of the White House staff, right, you're already into the thousands, and then you're managing all of these government agencies. I mean, you're managing essentially, as the president of the United States, millions of people. That scares me. And I want people to think about that and what kind of person and what kind of experience we need in that position. And if being able to identify problems, again, is the same thing as being able to enact solutions.